Brilliant. Hello, everyone. Just waiting for some more people to arrive. In the meantime, please do feel free to use the chat function to let us know where you're joining from, where you're tuning in from. Brilliant. Okay, so I will begin. Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining our first masterclass of 2022, where we'll be talking about how to turbocharge your career for this year and beyond. My name's April, I'm Programs Manager here at Creative Access, and thanks to those of you who are joining for the first time, those of you who are new trainees or new starters, welcome. I'm delighted to be joined by our amazing panelists, Executive Leadership Coach and Diversity and Inclusion Advocate Lynn Blades, and football journalist and Creative Access alum Ahmed Shooble for today's masterclass. We'll hopefully be providing you with some practical advice and inspiration to help you boost your career in 2022. And I'll pass over to you both to introduce yourselves. Lynn, would you like to start?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Lynn Blades, and I am a fierce female advocate for leadership at the top table by women and people from underrepresented backgrounds. I started out my career as a journalist, so many years ago. It's frightening to even admit, but I'm 61 now, so I've been recreating myself many times, but I was an Emmy Award-winning journalist, won a Peter Liskor Award for investigative journalism, and I came to this country 22 years ago and found that I wasn't supposed to be in the business anymore. So I reinvented myself. I took those skills, transferable skills that I had as a journalist, and I made myself into a very successful leadership coach. I work with Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, all the way down to entrepreneurs. And young people, the best and the brightest coming out of university from diverse backgrounds, making sure that they have the support and leadership qualities necessary to navigate what is a tricky landscape these days. So happy to be with Creative Access and happy to be here this evening.
Thanks, Lynn. We're really glad to have you. And over to you, Ahmed, to introduce yourself.
Wow, I'm not sure how I'm going to top that, but lovely to be here. Good evening to you all. Pleasure to be here. I'm Ahmed Shooble. I'm the Bournemouth reporter for The Athletic. Still relatively new in my career. Unlike Lynn, still sort of working my way through, but definitely getting my foot in the door. Working with, at The Athletic, one of the biggest sports companies in the world, not just in this country. So yeah, happy to help you guys turbocharge your career for 2022.
Brilliant. We'll see what we can do. So I'm going to move on to the questions. So just for those of you in the audience who aren't familiar, we will start with some questions, hopefully cover some interesting and helpful tips that you can take forward. And then we'll go to questions at the end. So do use the Q&A function rather than the chat function if you do have any questions. So it allows others in the audience to upvote, and then we will go to questions for in the second half of the session. So the first question I have, and this is what all of us discuss, I guess, and that is kind of around the meaning of turbocharging your career and what does it mean? So what do you think it means to you, both as panelists in general, but also what does it mean right now in 2022? So yeah, maybe just if we go to Ahmed to start, how would you define turbocharging your career?
I think it probably would have to refer to having a plan, an action plan. And I know that, that's a bit of a buzzword and can sort of stir a little bit of anxiety, as it used to do with me. But I think, having an action plan in terms of figuring out where you want to be, not necessarily as an end goal, but maybe in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. Speaking specifically to my experiences as a writer, if there's a specific publication you want to write for, if there's a specific topic you want to cover, then I would suggest, looking at that end goal and then retracing your steps backwards. So as in to reverse engineer it. So if there's for example, you want to write for The Guardian, you really like The Guardian, you like the writers there, you find out who's the commissioning editor for the area that you want to write about. And then you figure out, how do I get in touch with that person? How do I, can I invite this person out for a coffee? How do I get, how do I attract their eyes to my pieces? How do I get their attention almost? And I think it's sort of, making sort of an action plan and sort of small actionable items that you can incrementally work on to work towards your goal. I know the word turbo can make it seem like it's a sort of a race, but it's definitely a journey more so.
For me, I like that word journey. I do think it is a journey, and actually, counter to the anxiety that the last 2.5 years has brought us all, I think that it's time to be mindful. And when I think of turbocharging, I think I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take the moment to really think about what I want to do. And then I am going to focus. Because when you're focused and you're not trying to multitask and you're not full of anxiety and you've lowered your heart rate, you'll find that your ambition increases, your inhibition dissipates, and you're able to set goals that are achievable. And you probably won't limit yourself so much. So it's like giving yourself a chance to hone in on something so that you really feel it. You know that you want to do it. Don't be so fast. When you are fast, it leads you in directions you don't necessarily want to go. When you are slower, when you are mindful, when you are focused, you are much more likely to get where you want to go more quickly. Stop trying to do 50 things at once. Do them in a prioritized way. Launch your career in a prioritized way. Be innovative. And the number one thing that holds us back is fear itself. Fear is like wearing cement shoes. There'll be plenty of other obstacles in your way without being your own worst enemy. That should turbocharge you.
I think that's a brilliant summary there, Lynn. Thank you so much. And I have another question for you, Lynn, actually. What advice would you give to those who are starting from the ground up now? You're talking about, being bold and being brave. How can people remain positive, resilient, and persevere in the current landscape, particularly when they might be facing discrimination, trying to network or find opportunities in a pandemic?
I think that we're going through a cultural change now, and there's a lot of opportunity out there because of George Floyd. What happened with diversity, equity, and inclusion is that people who were not underrepresented joined the call for equality and justice. So now it's real. It's not just brown people, disabled people, women, people who identify differently sexually. It's a collective. And because it's a collective, you should feel like you are part of a real body, a solid body, a movement that is happening. And that should give you faith. But it is not part of British culture to be contradicting. It's not and confrontational, to call things out. I would say to you, this is your moment. If the door opens for you, don't ask why. Run through the damn door and grab somebody that looks like you and take them through with you. This is not the time to ask yourself, oh, I just got that job because I'm Black. I got that job because I'm a woman. Did I get that job because I'm disabled? Who gives a crap how you got the job? Do the job to the best of your ability, take it and run. This is what you have to do now, because this opportunity to expand diversity and equity and inclusion, even though the change is always slow, I think it's pretty unstoppable. So you have to have that sense of self, that sense of self-esteem, that sense of deserving. There is no time to ask, Why should it be me? It's you because opportunity showed itself and you took it. So be prepared. I think that's the thing that you want to be. You want to be prepared. And also look for opportunity that might not be so obvious. We don't actively listen, so we miss opportunities that are presented to us. And opportunity is all around us all the time. You must be proactive. Do not wait for someone to come and tap you on the shoulder and say, you're great. I'm gonna give you that job. No, 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 no. Go make the opportunity for yourself. Don't be afraid to do it. Summons your courage and go out there and get what you want. I believe in the dual system of fate and manifesting your own destiny. Humans are very capable of manifesting what they want. You just have to believe it. But more importantly, you have to believe that you deserve it. So it's back to that fear and that undeserving. You need to eradicate that. You want to turbocharge your career, turbocharge your life, turbocharge you. It's about self-belief and courage and resilience and determination.
You've spoken before, Lynn, about like the power of networking online, digital networking, and I remember when I'm a Great Access alumni myself, and when I did my first workshop with you, you were telling everyone to follow you on LinkedIn, and if we didn't, that we weren't, that showed that we weren't, practicing what you were teaching us. So, do you think that that's kind of a really good tool for people to use now in a pandemic? We're talking about kind of knocking on doors. If people can't physically knock on doors and physically network in person, would you say that digital network is like something that's really important for people to be proactive with now?
Absolutely, April. And I'm sure Ahmed would agree with this, that reaching out, becoming a part of a digital community. And look, I have to say, this is not natural for me to be a part of a digital community and social networking. I've had to learn the value of it myself. We just, we didn't grow up with cell phones and all this technology. But I realized the importance of this technology, in particular, LinkedIn. Someone told me I needed to use LinkedIn, and I was like, I can't stand social media. Let me tell you, I did some research. Someone says something, I go back, I always check it out. I did the research, I read about it, and then I started engaging. When LinkedIn has something like 74 million captive viewers, and only 6% of the content is original. So if you actually get onto LinkedIn and you start posting your thoughts and ideas, you will find a like-minded community. And if you start posting original articles, eventually people will start tuning into you to hear what you have to say about specific subjects. And they'll start calling on you. I kid you not, I get serious jobs from LinkedIn. I get 5-figure jobs by people who follow me or look at me and think of me as a leader in my field. So it is definitely a place. But so I think would be Clubhouse, or some people used Instagram that way to generate their business. I mean, there's a lot of platforms out there that you can use. Twitter, of course. For me, the one that has been most effective has been LinkedIn, and I definitely have found a like-minded community, and I also have joined different communities on LinkedIn, which has been incredibly useful.
Talking of like-minded communities and writing articles, Ahmed, you started off writing articles and building, I guess, your own online community or fan base. What do you think about this topic and kind of the power of online networking?
Well, I definitely echo Lynn's sentiments in terms of showing initiative and putting yourself out there and making sure that you are constantly in control of, you're always thinking about who's seeing my articles, when are they seeing it, when are the best times to post them. you know, how can I get this in front of the most important people? How can I get this in front of people who need to see it, essentially? Because when I first started, I mean, I knew I sort of had a talent or a knack for writing. I had, you know, the conversations that I was having with the people, you know, closest to me in terms of just friends or family members within sport, within racism in sport or whatever. I felt like those conversations were not really had or didn't really have the same sort of substance, particularly within mainstream media. And that was the sort of niche that I carved out for myself. So it's definitely about putting yourself out there yourself, showing that initiative, whether that's the way you sort of market your pieces, whether that's the way you pitch, whether that's even the way you get in touch with people. I feel like as long as you're not creepy, as Lynn touched on, with social media, it's, you know, we're in an age where it's the easiest it can be to get in touch with your favorite writers. Literally, most of them have their DMs open. If they don't, a quick mention, and they'll get back to you. And if you show them that initiative, I think most successful writers, a large majority of successful writers, I think if you show that initiative, they'll definitely see, I guess, themselves in you. And if they're not willing to help at the time, they won't always help because journalists tend to be quite busy chasing other people. But as long as you show that initiative and you can show and you show what you can offer, I think that, you know, you're always in for a win.
And I want to add to that and say, you know, like my mama said when I was a little girl, if you don't ask, you don't get. So, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was quickly nicknamed Gimme. And let me tell you, I've gotten a lot. I ask for what I want. And I would encourage you to do the same.
100%, 100%.
Thanks, Ahmed. We have a question from Sophia, who submitted this question prior to the talk today. What is the best way to get into sports journalism? She graduated with a 2-1 on English language, in English language and communication, but when applied for traineeships, it doesn't seem to help because she doesn't have a background in journalism. What advice would you give to Sophia?
Well, thank you, Sophia, for your question. I think it's it definitely helps to have a journalism qualification. I have one, but I definitely got my foot in the door initially without one. I graduated from Coventry University with a first class in business and law, and then I quickly realized that learning about law and actually practicing law and having it as a career are two entirely different things, and I wanted to pursue more of a passion in writing. But as long as you can convey sort of the transferable skills, for me personally, in my law degree, I had to sort of look at vast documents and sort of distill them into a much more easily digestible, shorter piece, maybe with an argument or a discussion. And that's essentially what the game of journalism, really, taking large pieces of information and distilling them into, you know, stimulating discussion in a similar way. So as long as you're able to show those parallels in whatever field you come from beforehand, that should definitely ease the transition. Speaking, you know, only from my writing experience. In terms of, I mean, having particularly in this country, there are a lot of traditional recruiters who will, you can be the most perfect candidate, have the most glowing references, the cover letter is smashing and all the rest of it. But if you don't have that qualification, it's almost a cherry on top, and you might meet some resistance. But I think that is, it's that mindset, I think, is gradually deteriorating, and we're beginning to see people, you know, I mean, if you're talking about just pitching articles and being a freelancer, I don't think you need a sort of a qualification at all. But if you are applying to those sort of traineeships, I guess then they would probably look at that and might hold it against you. But I wouldn't be too deterred. I think it would make your life a bit easier. If possible, I would suggest to get it, but it's definitely not some kind of prerequisite at all. I think the best way for you to get your name out there is just for you to sort of cut out the middleman and just get straight to the commissioning editor or get straight to whoever you need to speak to in terms of the recruiter, and wow them with whatever skills you've got in the bank already. I'm sure you do. And show how those skills can transfer. I think the main thing is just carving out a niche for yourself, showing why you're the person to write a piece, why whoever you're pitching to is the best place to pitch it, and essentially why you're the best person to write it. I think that's, more than anything, that's the most important thing to be in terms of being a writer in this space, particularly in sports. I
would also add to that when I first came, I I had done some magazine writing, but I didn't know anybody. Honestly, I thought, I'm going someplace where people speak the English language and, we have all these things in common, but actually the language was the only thing we had in common. So my whole approach had to change. I had to reshape the way I said things and did things, and that took time. But one thing I did do is I just did my homework and found out who the editors actually were for print. And I sent spec articles and, wrote on spec, and people would pick it up and buy it, and eventually started to develop a name for myself. So I did that in between when I was doing my coaching degree. So you can send a piece of spec, or you can send maybe 3 ideas to an editor of a magazine and say, I can do this, that, and the other. And they may say, actually, I like that idea. Why don't you come back to me with so-and-so? It's a process, but it does definitely happen. And like Ahmed said, people like to see initiative. And that's where I go back to the fear factors. People are so afraid to actually take that first leap of faith, that take the initiative and reach out and try to network, that you hold yourself back. And it's not really the fear of failure itself, it's the way failure makes us feel. It makes us feel unwanted, it makes us feel dejected. And that's the real reason why people won't take that first step to try something. But actually, if you don't fail, you can't succeed. Every failure is a learning opportunity. And you have to remember that. You have to fail to succeed sometimes.
Talking about failure, I thought it'd be good to maybe talk about some of the most difficult things that we've faced in our career. Like, Lynn, what has been the most difficult situation you faced in your career, and how did you overcome it? And I guess we could all talk about that. I'd be interested to hear from you, Ahmed, as well.
There are a couple of things that I will always sit with me. And one of the biggest things was sexual harassment in the workplace. And I was at CBS, a big network in Chicago, a youngish woman, mid-20s, and their anchor man routinely harassed me every day, completely inappropriate. Just, I can stick up for myself, and I did stick up for myself, but that didn't do any good. There were people all around me who witnessed it and just kind of were, that's just the way he is type of thing. You just got to take it. But actually, even way back then, I was like, nah, this is not right. Really is not right. And so I was lucky. I felt at the time I was lucky because the head of the network in Chicago was a Black man named Jonathan Rogers, who was a very powerful man at CBS and a powerful man at the network. And I felt that he would have my back. And I went and I complained about it, and I told him about it, and said, I've said things myself, but something needs to be done. He just chuckled. He laughed it off. And I look around today, I had the strength to go, that's my sign, got to make an exit sometime soon. I did. I left it, never looked back. Had I complained maybe at that time, my career would have turned out differently. I certainly would have been blackballed at that network, but I didn't really care. But I knew I had things to do. So I chose to leave because I wasn't going to be harassed like that every day. And that is something that will always stay with me, and one of the most difficult things. The other thing that I will remember is I had a big failure. I had a couple of failures. One, I thought I was bigger than my boots, and I was offered the job at MTV. That started when I was, way back when I was one of those first people. I started E! Entertainment Network. I was their first anchor. That just tells you how, and I went from hard news to entertainment news. But one of the things that happened was MTV offered me the job of being their news person, because I used to have a segment on news when they first started. And I turned it down because I thought that I had a very good job at the time at CNN, and I thought they weren't paying me enough money and they didn't want to give me any benefits and blah, 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 blah. What I couldn't see is the opportunity that came with being in that position. I had an in-between man. I had the necessary evil agent who, was greedy and so on and so forth. So I was blinded to a certain degree, but it was on me. My gut said take it, and I didn't take that job. And that job led the person who did take it to a really great primo morning, national morning position. So, you live and you learn, but the lesson there was, keep your objectivity. Don't let a big head take over. That was a really good early lesson in my career. Who do you think you are? Everybody is replaceable. Great lesson to learn when you're young. Everybody is replaceable.
But also a lesson to trust your gut. You were saying your gut was telling you
Absolutely.
to go through it. Like
Absolutely.
your intuition never lies.
Your gut will rarely ever fail you. It's just having the courage to follow it.
Yeah, excellent advice. And Ahmed, what about you? What's been the most difficult, challenging thing that you faced in your career?
I think, because I'm still a little bit early into it, but I think initially, the imposter syndrome for sure. And Lynn touched on it earlier in terms of, having that courage, do I have this job because I'm Black, or do I have this job because I'm here to tick a box or whatever? And those, at first it can seem, because you realize how much work you put into it. And it can seem a little bit daft to feel like, oh no, it's, it can't be because of my skin, because I've put all this work in. I killed every interview. My cover letter was smashing. I've worked for this. So it's also that's the sort of biggest deal. And also I'm working quite closely with sports fans, and a lot of them on social media. And I'm pretty sure I don't have to tell you guys that sports fans can be, particularly when they're hiding behind some sort of alias when it's not their real name, they can get a little bit nasty, especially if you just have an opinion that's different to theirs, or they could wake up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning and just unload all of that negative energy on you. So it's important to be grounded and have that self-belief and be like, I'm here because I'm good at what I'm here because I deserve to be at the end of the day. And it's a small thought, but it's a thought that I think, if it's worth writing down somewhere, or if it's worth reciting to yourself, however you want to manifest that, just drill that into your head, because that self-worth is going to, if you keep embedding it into yourself, it's almost like a seed. If you keep watering it every day, you take care of it, it will grow. And I guess your opportunities are limitless after that. It's very important that you are your biggest supporter and not your biggest enemy.
Mm.
Yeah,
Very
I
powerful.
definitely agree with that. I think I had similar feelings and experiences, and I think for me, at the beginning of my career, because I was going into arts and culture sector, was well, at the very beginning of my career, there was it was very like a culture of unpaid internships. Creative Access is only 10 years old, so maybe I'm showing my age there, but I really didn't know how to get in and how to get my foot on the ladder without doing unpaid internships. And I wasn't really in a position to afford to do that. And so I really, really struggled in terms of money. I really, really struggled to think about how I could ever have a career and work for free. And it was like one of these things where you had to have experience to get the job and had to have done some kind of internship. And so I think I did about 2 or 3 unpaid internships, short term, but still that was really hard to juggle alongside some casual work that I was doing. I did so many different casual shifts and working in hospitality and retail. And then on top of that, explaining to my family, like, why, like justifying that to them. And that was really, really hard for the first couple of years, trying to justify why I was doing unpaid internships. Like, my family really didn't understand why I was working for free, especially when I was the first in my family to go to university. So I think that was really, really tough, and it really did require that pulling on my intuition. I just kept thinking, like, this has to be worth it. Like, I can't you know, I can't keep justifying this. There has to be some light at the end of the tunnel. And eventually there was. So yeah, I definitely agree with you, Ahmed, like this imposter syndrome sometimes, and that feeling that I had at the time, I really didn't know if it was gonna work and if it was gonna pay off. I just had like faith in myself and just was juggling 2 to 3 jobs, the unpaid internships that were part-time with working in, you know, a bar at the weekend and then working other times in retail. So I had 3 jobs basically at the beginning of my career, and that was really, really tough. But it did pay off in the end.
It's discriminatory though, just so you know, it really plays against the underrepresented. It plays, you know, it keeps the underdog, it keeps that person that doesn't have access to opportunity from, you know, becoming a part of the success, you know, getting on the success ladder. And I remember, we don't do that in the States. You come and you work and you know, you get a minimum wage, but you get some money. Sometimes you get a lot of money. It just depends, but it's criminal. I think it's a criminal thing. I thought ever since and I told my daughter she's never allowed to work for free, ever.
It's true. It's a really
my charities are free. That's it. You work hard, you work for your money. Yes, opportunity gained for, you know, obviously experience and opportunity gained, but you have to eat, you have to live. You should not be working for free. You should not be giving away your talent for free. And that is something, you know, when you say imposter syndrome, 85% of people in positions of power experience imposter syndrome. It's women who discuss it more and who outwardly show it more. But men experience that too. And Ahmed, I'm so happy that you said it, because it's truth. But the thing about imposter syndrome is it usually plays on emotion and does not actually reflect the facts and data around the situation that you're in. So you need to take the emotion out of it and look at the situation for its face value, the facts, you know, the data that is there. You know, did you actually achieve something that led you to that position? Like Ahmed said, he's a good writer. He did everything right. He aced the interviews. Of course he should be there. You know, his skin color shouldn't have anything to do with it. I'm just saying, if your skin color did, who cares? You know, the opportunity was yours. But to feel like it and be made to feel like an imposter, or making yourself feel like an imposter, means that you're probably buying into emotion, the emotional feelings that comes with wondering if, why am I deserving, should be converted to, of course I'm deserving. Yes, I should have abundance. Why not me? It should be that you're saying to yourself. Why not me? Look, I've done X, Y, and Z, and I can look at it. So next time you're feeling like you don't deserve it, or you're an imposter, or you're in a situation where you're not sure you're equipped, actually stop yourself and think, what did you do to get there? There will be, I promise you, a positive anchor, what I call a positive anchor, somewhere in the body of work that you have created for yourself. And you need to use that positive anchor, some success that you've had, and buy into it. Anchor yourself in your successes. Play to your strengths, not your weaknesses. Own your greatness. Own it. Feel it. You have to feel that yourself. That sense of confidence comes from within, but it's usually based on data. You know, if you look at the facts, you can probably find the reason why you've been presented with opportunity.
Thanks, Lynn. To continue off of that, I was wondering if you had any tips or resources for personal development that you could share with attendees, and same with Ahmed, what kind of your best methods for personal development?
I am curious about life in general. Curiosity is the #1 leadership quality. You must be curious to be able to advance. And I am often looking for things to read. I am often looking for inspiration and ideas and art and culture. in food, in relationships with people that I don't know, and listening, actively listening, not just brushing over, but actively listening to what people are saying and responding by being present and making new connections. Those are the things that make your life rich and, you know, create a fabric for yourself that is just not one-dimensional. It has texture in it. And we all need to be, you know, have texture and have depth. And that comes out of just being curious by nature. So anything that you can experience will add to your collective life experience and will help you grow and develop as a person. But it all starts with a sense of curiosity about life in general.
What about you, Ahmed? You obviously kind of were able to upskill yourself and progress in your career, so your professional and personal development. And I was wondering, like, how did you do that? Like, what kind of skills did you have at the beginning, and how did you develop new skills in order to get to where you are now?
I think I just didn't really stop, to be honest, because I moved into a passion of mine, sports journalism, football journalism, whatever you want to call it. It was something that I'd always have been doing in my spare time. So when I started, I kind of already had a head start because it was, you know, in a very sort of almost lazy way, actually. I was like, what career can I step into that I won't really need much training for? And I was like, well, I've basically been training to be a football writer my entire life because I've been going to all these matches, I've been, you know, partaking in all these discussions, and I've been memorizing all these stats and all these other stuff. You know, I can do what they do, right? And then so with that came, you know, how do you do it to a professional standard? Because anyone can do it as a hobby or as a side thing, but, you know, to actually be recognized professionally, you know, for that to be your actual career, I think that where possible, it would help to get some kind of mentor, or, you know, just someone from the outside, because as Lynn alluded to earlier, when you're involved in something like this and it's a big change, or you're embarking on a massive sort of jump in your adult life, it can be difficult for you yourself to remove the emotion out of the situation. And that's where someone else on the outside can come in, because sometimes you just need a fresh perspective. You know, read this piece for me. Even someone who doesn't like football, is it too wordy? You know, is the sentence structure okay? Like, what's my syntax like? You know, these sort of weird little questions. It can be easy to overthink these things on your own because it's yourself dealing with it, and you're very sort of conscious of how you come across. But I think as long as you have, obviously where possible, someone from the outside, like this can be a family member, this can be, you know, a friend. This could be someone, I guess, who's working in your industry, but not in your specific field. So if it's a writer, maybe someone who's a showbiz writer or something, or a news writer, just somebody who can offer you a fresh perspective. I think that's probably a way for you to do that. Yeah.
And I want to pick up on something that Ahmed said, which I think was so key, and the reason why he's found his success and is happy with what he does, is that he followed his passion. You know, if you want to develop yourself, follow your passion. Follow your passion. Your passion will create happiness for you. There's no point in going through life being unhappy, doing a job just to be doing a job and making money, when you could actually do something that you're passionate about, if you believe it. If you believe that, you can manifest it. He was very practical about his approach. It's like, I love that. I've been studying to be a sports journalist all my life. He was really practical about it, and he loves it. So he made it happen. He knew he had those transferable skills. It was it sounds like it was very pragmatic for you. And that is a great approach. It's an approach for success. Following something that you're passionate about, that makes you happy, that you know about, and building on that.
Ahmed, you were saying that talking about the passion that you had for writing. How did you start off? Like, what platforms were you using? How did you get your work out there? And when you were writing for yourself and doing your opinion pieces, and then you transferred into writing on behalf of the publication, how did you remain authentic and unfiltered when writing so publicly?
Oh, that is a very, very good question. I think, well, when I initially started, I literally, there was a particular football podcast that I listened to, Touchline Fracas, and they were really good. They, were are guys who like me, who are exactly like me, speak like me, grew up in areas like mine, who look like me, who I could relate to, most importantly, who are having conversations about football that I were often having with my mates, and I would never expect to be, those kinds of views to be had or held or even discussed anywhere on BBC, ITV, wherever, Sky Sports. So, that was really refreshing to me. And I just reached out to them one day and I was like, hey, I know you guys have a website, you occasionally have writers. And this is just like a bunch of guys on the side. It's not a very successful podcast. They have maybe about 1,000 listeners a week or stuff. But I was like, I know you guys aren't paying for writers and stuff. I'm looking to get into writing myself, looking to hone my craft. And I'd love to sort of get involved. I have a few ideas. And they were really easy with it. They were like, yeah, sure, whatever. Send your ideas through, work it through WordPress. It was a very simple WordPress website, publish every fortnight or so. And then because they had such a big sort of, the audience for their actual podcast was a lot bigger for their website. I actually drew a lot of people back to their website, which they were very thankful for. But a lot of, to my surprise, actually, a lot of established journalists were actually listening to that podcast as well. And through that, they were able to see my pieces, and then my profile was able, my reach was able to grow much bigger because people were interested in what I was saying. I was covering topics which, for example, I think the piece which brought me a lot of attention was I wrote about I think the actual title of the piece was The Sorry State of British Football Punditry. And it was just about, stale white males in the industry, disguising their comments about young Black players through different stereotypes and tropes. And this player's too flashy because he's got a car, and he's not focused enough on his football, and all these, he should just keep his head down. I forget which American anchor said to LeBron, probably Lincoln told me this, but shut up and dribble. A lot of that different, just a lot of that, and me just doing my best to dispel that in the least passive aggressive way possible. But yeah, that's how I got my start. But in terms of me sort of growing my reach after that, it's more of a case of just building on that and never stopping. As I touched on earlier, it's a passion of mine. So it wasn't really hard for me when I got that initial buzz to keep, exploring different things. And obviously, writing opinion pieces is one thing I'm learning as well as a journalist that's full time. It's like being opinion writing is where I got my start, but it's one probably out of the 10 different things you need to master in this space. You need to be able to be a good news writer. You need to be able to cultivate sources, and that takes a lot of people skills and trust. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to just know how to harness luck as well. A lot of this stuff is just being in the right place at the right time. And you can be in the right place in the right time and still not really take full advantage of the situation, and that comes with mistakes and trial and error. It's it's a long process, but I think there are going to have to be a few tumbles for you to get, I guess, to the finished article. No pun intended.
I love it. I completely agree with you. I think people skills are often underestimated. So, especially when you go in at the early stage of your career for interviews, it's something that I feel like I really realized was so important as I went on in my career. Like, you have to be able to develop relationships and maintain those relationships, and there's a lot of juggling involved. So the skills that you're developing, then you've got the people skills, and there's a lot there's a lot more than what is on your job description, basically, that you have to hold and maintain. So I'm really interested to hear from you, Lynn, especially because you've made some transitions in your career. You went from being Emmy Award winning journalist, writer and producer to an elite executive coach. What inspired this change, and what transferable skills were you able to draw upon?
So funny enough, it was my husband who led me into coaching. I think I was always the person who never thought I would, didn't have any desire to get married, have children. I was very, very career focused, always raised to win. You mentioned that about the sports commentator. And when I was growing up, I was an All-American swimmer, and we had a sports commentator named Howard Cosell who said, "Oh, Black people don't swim because they've got their behinds and their thighs are too big. They're built like runners, He's the guy who got fired for saying someone looked like an ape. Anyway, so yeah, very famous, event. But I think the thing that when you're a journalist, my husband had noted that I had a lot of people skills. I had always had very good people skills, conversation skills, enjoyed talking to people, finding out about people, and that I'd always been a kind of a mentor or coaching in some, way, informal way, all through my even from my teenage years. And he brought that up to me when I came here. I shot 2 television series that never aired because the commissioning editors changed before my series went on the air. And I said that, well, this is a sign I'm supposed to do something different. And he led me in that direction. He said, you should go back and get a coaching degree. And I was like, oh, really? When it was actually quite obvious. I am always kind of the mom in the group. I am always the person that people come to for advice. It's just things I didn't recognize about myself because I was just too close to it. But it was actually really a natural transition for me. But had he not pointed that out, I don't know if I would have thought about making it a profession. So it took an out, he's obviously not an outsider, but it took someone else to point that out to me. And when I look back and I look at my family, I come from a long line of natural coaches. We are like people whisperers. My entire family are people whisperers. And, what was I thinking? So I think that, I got a little blinded by the light that comes with being in Hollywood and, being on camera and all that nonsense. No, it's not nonsense, but you know what I mean? I just think I realized that, and then I just went like, right, I should be doing something different now. I had an interview. I interviewed Nora Ephron, and I think I was probably 10 years into my career, and she just said to me, how long have you been doing this? And I said, 10 years. And she goes, you should be changing a career every decade. And I was like, did she notice I wasn't interested in her? When hearing that Sally wasn't holding my attention. But, people point things out to you, and you have to be able to hear and listen to get the message. So, yeah, I knew I had the transferable skills once somebody pointed it out to me. It was a very natural transition for me to make.
Well, I'm just conscious of time, and I want to give enough time for questions. So I might ask 2 more questions. The first one is talking about this idea of change. Lynn, you're an advocate for diverse leadership in the sector, and Ahmed, tackling racism in sport has been a prevalent and much discussed issue over the last couple of years. Are you both hopeful for change? What do you think about the future of the creative industries?
Of course, I'm hopeful. Yes, I always have hope. I sit on the board of London Screen Academy, and I've been there since the beginning when they opened, and I was a trustee there. And, Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner and David Heyman and Barbara Broccoli and Lisa Fisher, all of these people have great intentions about diversifying the film industry. However, they are all white and all privileged. And I think that in the 3 years I've been there, I've been saying the same thing, that you cannot be what you cannot see. And while I think that I know their intention is good, and I know that they're reaching, out to people who haven't had the opportunity before, the underrepresented, really tapping into fabulous new talent. They're also kind of creating foot soldiers, and you need to actually create lieutenants and generals as well. But you can't do that unless somebody can see that they can be that. So I do feel, yes, the intention is there, but there's something, the opportunities they've had to put people of color on the board of trustees or the SLT, the senior leadership team, they've missed it. They haven't done it. And I find it very, very frustrating that white liberal mentality that is, I am your savior. It's like, you're not my bloody savior. Thank you for the opportunity that I should have had 100 years ago. But, you know, thank you for that. Now, give me somebody that looks like me so I don't feel like I'm the only. We're often, too often, the only at the table. Only woman, only Black person, only disabled person, whatever. Only Black man. I'm like this. When I said I would join them, I said I'm not gonna be your token. But I have been hitting my head against a brick wall. So yes, I have hope. Yes, there is much more opportunity. Yes, there will continue to be more opportunity, but speak up and speak out and call it out, because if you do not, it will slowly, slowly, slowly derail itself because the people at the top are afraid of losing power. Speak up or blame yourself.
Amen.
What about you, Ahmed? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I am definitely hopeful of change. That's probably one of the main motivators of me deciding to embark on a career in sports journalism. I should have mentioned earlier when I was touching on my sort of journey into it, the first sort of real job, I guess, it was an intern position when I was fresh out of university. It was at the Black Collective Media and Sport, BComs, and they're a charity that focuses looking at the underrepresentation of just ethnic minorities, women, disabled people within sports media. And every 2 years or so, they have an event called the D Word, obviously the D word being diversity. And they conduct this sort of academic study where they look at all the major sporting events in that year, whether it be Wimbledon, the Olympics, Paralympics, Winter Olympics, World Cup, Euros, whatever. And they look at, for each broadcast, so if it's BBC, ITV, Sky Sports, whoever, how many people on screen were being sent to that tournament. How many of those people who are sent to that tournament are women? How many of those people are from ethnic minority? How many are both women and ethnic minority? Obviously, the numbers were shockingly low. There have been some improvements since, but still nowhere near where they need to be. And I think the main reason why I obviously working with them, with BComs for, I think it was from the summer till about up until the new year, so for a good few months, I realized I just wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. So obviously I am hopeful of change, but then again, when you're actually, not to say I'm on the front line, I don't want to sort of glamorize it like that, but just when you're in the midst of trying to enact change and you're fighting the fight, you do come across people where it's like, oh, bloody hell, we're a long way off. And this gets really draining. And I'm not sure if I'm ever going to see any meaningful change, even in my lifetime. It can get like that. But that's where I think the community aspect comes into it. It can't be one person, trying to fight a crowd. It's got to be a sort of communal effort. There's a growing need for allyship, I think, within not just my space, but in just the general creative space, because there's a lot that needs to be done, and it doesn't get changed without everyone coming together. So yes, I am hopeful, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of work to do. Which is not probably the most promising or the most encouraging note, but it's real. It's where we are. I think it's important to be truthful to ourselves in that aspect.
And I do want to say you are absolutely right on every one of those touchstones. And particularly, I have to say about allyship is that we all have to remember that the balance of power is held by white men. And we do need white male allies. We need people who are progressive thinkers. We need people who want to change the situation and want to power share. So it's not like we're saying you're excluded. It's just saying, okay, I heard your side forever. Now I want you to hear my side so that we can put the best of those sides together and move forward. You know, we can't do this without the allies. And we have to speak as a collective, because a house divided cannot stand. History has separated us, and in particular Black people, forever and ever and ever, because they don't want us to be a cohesive force. Women during the feminist movement of the 60s and 70s, we were a collective, and then we divided ourselves out into Black and white feminists. And look, you know, where did that get us in the long run? It is we, the underrepresented, as a collective, that's where our strength lies. And we need to look at it that way. We don't want to exclude those people that have the power. We just need to enlighten, and we need to be enlightened too, about our own power, our own strength, and our own sense of deserving. We need to believe and love ourselves in order to progress.
Thanks, Lynn. And talking about enlightenment and loving yourself, if you could speak to your former younger self, what is one piece of advice that you would give yourself at the start of your career that you wish you'd been told at the very beginning?
Don't be so fast. Patience is a virtue. You can have everything, but not at the same time. I think those are the key points.
I like those. I would echo that. I definitely think patience is one of mine as well. What about you, Ahmed?
I think for me, it would probably be just be yourself, man. I think particularly when you're coming into a space where a lot of people don't look like you, you can fall into the trap of, you know, trying to fulfill a certain position, talking a certain way, tweeting a certain way, writing a certain way. My first piece I ever sort of did for The Athletic when I first joined, had a very long chat with my editor afterwards, and he was like, "Right, I get what you're trying to do." It was just it was too wordy. I used way too many big words, way too many adjectives. And he just had a word with me, and he goes, "Look, I get like The Athletic is a very wordy place to be. It's a place where, you know, these color pieces run free, but I need you to just be yourself. And like, I know you don't normally talk like this because I had a conversation with you and you weren't using any of these multi-syllabic words. So I get you want to impress, but you'll impress me more by just being yourself, because that's ultimately why you want to be here, right? You got a passion for this stuff. And if you do have a passion for it, that will shine through more than any, you know, you could think you have I thought I had the whole game sewn up. I thought I knew exactly what I needed to say. You know, I was saying the right things in the interviews. I thought I was bossing it. I thought I had to play a role. And, you know, being a journalist is in and of itself already a very tiresome job, no matter if you're going into a particular field of journalism that you are passionate about. There are going to be a lot of late nights. There are going to be a lot of early starts following that. There are going to be a lot of long days. And there are going to be a lot of times where you're questioning, like, is this really what I want to do? And I think something that's going to probably weigh even harder on top of that, is if you're putting up some sort of facade, some sort of act, that's probably it's going to make it even more difficult for you. So I'd suggest, yeah, just be yourself, man. Express yourself, and don't forget why you started. I think yeah, those are the key points I'd have.
Yeah, I definitely echo that as well. Being authentic to your true self, something I wish I had done earlier. And yeah, having patience, taking time, because I think I very much tried to rush things at the beginning of my career, and I thought that everything had to happen in your 20s, as they often tell you, or you often feel like in your early 20s, and it's just it's not really true. There's so many things that I'm still learning in my career, and I feel like there's so many things I'm looking forward to learning as I go on in my career as well. So thank you so much for that really great advice. I'm going to move on to questions now, just because I'm conscious of time, and I know we've got a few questions here, and I want to make sure we get through as much as as many of them as possible. So the first one is from Emily. Emily says, you mentioned at the beginning of the talk about taking time to think about what you're passionate about and to focus on that. Do you have any advice on the steps that you can take to find out what your career interests are? She recently graduated and is feeling a bit lost.
I think the first thing you want to ask yourself, Emily, is what makes you happy? Happiness is the most underrated quality, life quality. We're always so busy rushing through that we actually miss those fleeting moments of pure happiness, and they are few and far between. So I would say, really think about what makes you happy. What makes your heart sing? What are your actual strengths, your intellectual strengths, your physical strengths? And what are you passionate about? What would you go and stand, on speaker's box and hide corner and tell the world about? So if you can answer those questions, that will give you a start to where your passion lies. I just think it's very difficult to go wrong when you follow what you're passionate about. Yes, there needs to be some practicality in it, but don't be self-limiting in your thinking, because you just never know where creative thinking is going to lead you. So if you're having trouble, discovering what your passion is, go back and search your childhood and think about the things that made you really happy then, the things that you like to do, the activities that brought a smile to your face. And then what made you study what you studied at university? Was it something that your parents wanted you to study, or did you study something that you wanted to study? Think about it. Look at it as a collective and think of it as a puzzle that you put together. And if you do that, you follow that process, you'll start seeing a picture form that will make sense to you. And then you can build on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Lynn. I think there's been definitely times in my career and throughout my life where I've felt completely lost, like you, Emily, and I felt like, did I pick the wrong subject? Did I take the wrong path? And just, it can be a bit debilitating, actually. But I think you're right, Lynn. I think that's when you have to do some real soul searching and like what actually makes you happy. And sometimes it can be small things, and sometimes it can be something that you really buried behind because you've got so focused on another pathway.
Exactly.
And you have to like bring yourself back and like, yeah, kind of, I definitely think taking time out for that, and that's okay. Sitting in that discomfort is okay. And I think sometimes we can think that everyone else has the answers, but we're not. But like everyone has those periods, I think.
And don't be in a rush. I think that if you don't, it's experience your life, experience it, be present, and stop thinking that you have to get it all done just because it all has to take off immediately because you've graduated from university. Take your time. You'll limit your missteps by just taking your time, and it's okay to take your time. Rome wasn't created in a day.
Thanks, Lynn. The next question we have is from Karen, is asking, would you have any advice for someone who wants to change or redirect their career midway, say 10 years in, and enter the arts and cultural sector?
I think the first question you need to ask yourself is why are you pivoting? Is the pivot because it's a heart pivot, or you've come to the realization that you've gone as far as you want to go doing what you've done? And then you have to start looking back, and that it depends on how big of a pivot is. If you're in the media business already, to pivot to arts and culture could be easier than you anticipate. Go into your phone and actually start looking at every single contact that's in your phone that may be vaguely related to arts and culture, and start reaching out to people. Also, when you say arts and culture, you need to focus. You need to decide what part of the industry are you really actually interested in, so that you're not completely scattered. Once again, where does your passion lie? Be very specific about that. Because when you're mindful, when you're present, when you're specific, it just saves you time. So I think it's about getting in touch with what it is exactly that you want to do, and then trying to manifest that. Manifestation is real. We can manifest our destiny. So if you focus, you create a visual board for yourself, you know where you want to be, make it happen, visualize it, think about it, meditate on it, and reach and do the practical things of reaching out into your diary and going to exhibits and going places where you know you will meet that person, that type of person that you're interested in meeting and being a part of their circle.
If I could
Yeah,
just,
and
sorry, go on.
go ahead.
If I could just jump in, I think the importance of having a specific sort of idea of what you want to do. I think that's the main thing. I think Lynn was absolutely bang on with that. I'm someone who has a million thoughts every second. So it's very difficult for me to be specific with what I want. And I find that when I'm pitching to my editor, I'm just rambling a bunch of different things that I have written down. So I think for me, the main thing if you're looking sort of at exactly what you want to go to and you're not yet sure, which is perfectly fine, just something as simple as having a brainstorm, just writing your ideas down on paper and being able to extrapolate them one by one, as opposed to having a million. It depends how your mind works. But for me, I think it helps with being creative. I think just being able to just write one thing down at a time, and definitely taking your time. We can't stress that enough. This thing is not, you're not trying to record a personal best with this. You get one shot at life, and it's very important that you allow yourself and open yourself up to making mistakes so you can learn from them. There are some mistakes you're going to see other people make and learn from them, but I think the biggest lessons you'll learn will come from your own mistakes. So just take your time.
Yeah, I would completely agree with both of you. And Lynn, you were saying about doing your research. I think that's really important, because you need to know what transferable skills you need and what transferable skills you have that you can bring across. One of the things that I did when I was transferring from producing, so I was working in theatre, into the museum and gallery sector, into the art sector, I never thought that I would make that transition. But I realized when I was looking at job descriptions in the arts and cultural sector, in the museum sector specifically, that there were transferable skills. So I definitely agree with you, Lynn. It's really about doing your research. Look at the organizations that you'd like to work for. What do they do? What job roles exist in those organizations? Try and look at the job descriptions. If there is any vacancies, look at what they're looking for, and do you have any of those skills? And I definitely think that will help you with making that transition midway in your career. Who else? We've got some other questions here. I'll go as quickly as possible. So we've got a question from Sumya. Thank you to all the speakers. This session has been very helpful. My question is for Ahmed. What are the best ways to pitch articles, videos to news organizations? Most people and places that I write to don't get back. Any tips to get through would be helpful.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me, yeah?
Yep, you can.
Oh, cool, brilliant, yeah. I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think there are three main things with regards to pitching that are very important. And I think as long as you hit those three main points, you're good. You have to make sure that you have to sell your idea and make sure your idea is something interesting, what you're pitching. You have to make sure that whoever you're pitching to is the perfect place or the perfect house for your piece. And you have to make sure, number three, you're the perfect person to write that piece. As long as you have those three things, it's a good pitch as far as I'm concerned. And trust me, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to get back to you, because the culture of pitching can sometimes be a little bit, particularly when publications have small budgets and they'd much rather have their own full-time writers write a certain piece. So you have to be wary of that and not give too much away of your ideas, and make sure you open it up as a kind of conversation. Don't lay it all out there in the first email. Make it quick, snappy, and as long as you get those 3 points, so that's why you're the best person to write the piece, why the publication you're pitching to is the best house for it, and why the piece is actually important. Why should I care, essentially? As long as you answer those 3 questions, your pitch is golden.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ahmed. I think that's great advice. Hopefully that answers your question, Sumya. We have another question around mentoring. Ahmed, you mentioned mentoring earlier on. How and where can you find a mentor? Where did you find a mentor? Then maybe we can go to how they can find it.
There are many different ways. I guess you can reach out via email, or via DM. As I say again, without trying to be too creepy, just send a little message out, because, like I say, it's when journalists are very busy, but when they get that message from an aspiring journalist or an up-and-coming journalist or someone who's just trying to get their foot in the door, they'll always try. Like they'll have that feeling within them, because they know how that feels to have someone, to just feel like you don't really know where the next step is. So I guess reaching out, always feel the need to reach out, have that initiative, and show a bit of personality as well. Not too much, don't get too crazy, but just show something that I guess endears yourself, and don't always ask for something. Like sometimes just send them pieces. Just be like, these are the 3 pieces that I worked on my own blog. Have a read, send me feedback if you want. That the head editor of The Athletic, where I work now, that's how I initially got in with him. He saw my pieces online, and then we got in touch over email. I started sending him a few articles back and forth. He gave me some feedback, and then one day he was like, "Hey, a position's opened up, and we're not advertising, and I'd like you to apply." So that's how you sort of put yourself in there. I guess there are also unorthodox ways as well. I guess before the world of COVID, it's when I was going to sort of impromptu events, there would be big journalists there. That's how I met Henry Winter, who writes for the Times. I think he was the first big journalist that I really met. He's a juggernaut in English football journalism, English sports journalism, writes for the Times. He was someone who was really helpful, just in terms of reading over my pieces, just giving me general advice. So I mean, the people are out there. It depends what field you want to work in. I can only speak for mine in terms of sports journalism, but all you got to do is show that initiative, show that you're hungry, and show that you've got some kind of plan as well, that I want to be here, or I see myself working here, or just try and show something like tangible. Don't just come with a bunch of ideas. Show like, I've been doing this as well, and this is what I've been doing on the side, or whatever. That definitely will stand you in good stead to getting someone's attention to be your mentor.
I'd also like to take this opportunity to promote our own mentoring programs that you can find on our opportunities page. So keep checking our opportunities page, because we do advertise mentoring programs on there. And also check out our resources page as well. We've got lots of advice and guidance on mentoring and how to get the best out of mentoring relationships. Okay, next question. What have we got? Sorry. Tips for, and maybe this, Lynn, you could answer this. Tips for sending speculative CVs when you have limited work experience in your desired field. Any tips for virtual networking when you have limited work experience?
This is always like the spaghetti theory. You got to fling it out there and, hope that something sticks to the wall. But I think that the biggest thing is to be authentic, and show your personality. I think you can't worry about what people think. I think you have to be unafraid to put yourself out there, who you are, because it's just, what it does is it creates a foundation for you to be real. And people are either going to like that, and some people will, and some people won't. So if you are authentic in your approach, and original, then people are more likely to look at it instead of skimming it. If your CV is, light, then make sure that the cover level has personality, your personality. I just think that so much, and I live in this country definitely has a lot of boxes, and that desire to keep you in a box, and tell you that this is what you're good at. You're pigeonholed here, and you can't do something else. And I just find that the biggest bullshit ever. Just because you can't comprehend that I'm multifaceted and talented in different ways, doesn't make me not so. So I might put your whole self out there. Let it hang out. Eventually you'll refine it enough. It might be too big at first, but you'll bring it back in, you'll get your feedback, you'll mold it, and then you will find your original self really quite, it will feel right and good. And people feel that. People feel that kind of energy when it is real, whether it's on the page, whether it's digital, whether it's in person, people feel authenticity. So the best thing I can tell you is, if your resume is light, if your CV is light, flag up the cover letter enough to be authentic and original, and it will probably catch somebody's eye. But you'll have to put a lot of them out there probably. Don't think it's going to happen the first time round. You probably won't. But don't lose faith.
Yeah, and I also think you can put any voluntary experience that you have, anything that you're doing, any writing that you're doing, as Ahmed was saying, like anything you're doing that's a passion project, put that on your CV, because people are impressed with those who are using initiative and already doing things and proactive and being creative. So yeah, I think you can put those things on your CV as well. It doesn't just have to be paid work experience. I think we're going to move on to final questions because I'm conscious of time. And maybe this is a question that we can all answer. Are there any resources you'd suggest for anyone trying to level up, books, podcasts, or websites? Ahmed, do you have any good websites or podcasts that you listen to?
But just in terms of being a creative in general, or?
Yeah, being a creative in general, things that inspire you and help you to level up.
I mean, I can only speak specifically to my field. I mean, I just keep reading and writing whatever, my colleagues, not just my colleagues, but, my contemporaries, people in the space, always just reading and writing what they're doing. I never sort of, there are some people who in different creative spaces who are like, I don't tend to read what other people write, because if you're writing something similar, or if you're writing about a similar topic, you don't want certain overlaps, and you're conscious of, I guess, sort of indirectly plagiarizing or whatever, have them having an effect on what you're writing. I think that's complete nonsense. I think the more you read, not just within your own specific field, but outside of it, it will always broaden your mind. In terms of specific websites and stuff to use, I think Journal Resources is good. They post a lot of vacancies and openings. Obviously, Creative Access, they have loads of opportunities for you. I got my first paid, we're talking about the culture of unpaid internships. And I wanted to say, I actually got my first paid role within the space through Creative Access with the Times. I got to work on their sports desk for a summer, which is insane. Like that being my first, that being my first opportunity was like crazy. But yeah, that's also check out Creative Access for opportunities like that. Yeah, I think Creative Access, Journal Resources, Media Beams as well as one. Just loads of different those kinds of sorts of websites that are always posting all those weird creative startups or whatever. Those are the kinds of websites and alerts you should be setting up. Just so you can get a head start and see what's out there.
I also like Medium. That's a really good website, informative, interesting. It keeps your curiosity going. For me, I wake up and I'm on the New York Times app, so I'm reading the New York Times probably first and foremost, then tapping into the Guardian. But my favorite app of all apps, the thing that keeps me centered and make sure, because I spend my days inside of people's heads, is Calm. I use Calm. And I use an exercise app called Vaha. It's called actually Vaha, but it is one of those apps that just continuously motivates you, inspires you. I'm a mind, body, soul person. So I realize that my mind is turning over a lot of thoughts all the time, just like Ahmed said, it's 1,000 thoughts coming out of his mouth at once. I'm a little older, and so I don't do that as much now. I keep those thoughts in consider them before speaking out. And I do that by being very present and being focused and in the moment. And that comes from meditation and spending time being very peaceful and slow. And sometimes it's taking 2 minutes out of the middle of the day and just doing some deep breathing. And I find that there's a few apps out there that are quite good, but for me in particular, I like Calm. I also like Pinterest, and I like Instagram too.
I also,
I like people's
I'm also,
pictures.
I'm a mind, body, soul person too, Lynn. And yeah, I like all of those apps that you mentioned. I also like Headspace and Down Dog, which I've been using over the pandemic to do yoga. It's really calming. But in terms of professional resources, check out our website. Gonna have to keep plugging that because we have lots of good resources on there. Thanks for the shout out, Ahmed. And also, if you're interested in getting to the arts and cultural sector, check out Arts Professionals. There's a newsletter you can sign up for, and they also post arts news. Have a look at the Arts Jobs website. Again, there's arts news and jobs on there. And then also, in terms of social media, try and follow networks that have workers or arts workers or whatever sector that you're looking to work in. And there's lots of different professional networks. So we've got the Creative Access Alumni and Interns Facebook page, but there's lots of other ones like Jobs in TV, Runners, TV Runners. I know there's every WhatsApp group that we have. If you're not a member of any of our WhatsApp groups, join them. But there's lots of Twitter accounts that do the same thing, Facebook, email networks. So just try and find out which ones are out there. Google is your best friend, but also just search into Facebook. So I'm in several arts professional Facebook groups. One is Black Arts Professionals. Another one is, what's it called? Can't remember what the other one's called, but I just found it through like word of mouth and speaking to other professionals in my field. And you'll find that a lot of people cross post and post opportunities on those pages. So definitely check those out. And this session, this masterclass is being recorded. So if you've missed any of those things that we've mentioned, you can watch it back on our website. It will go up next week. So you can jot down those again. And we'll also do a write-up from the session as well. So hopefully we'll put some links in that write-up as well. Cool. I think that's all we have time for today. But I want to say a huge thanks to our amazing panel. Thank you so much, Lynn and Ahmed, for joining us and for giving your amazing and honest advice and experience and insight to our attendees. And thank you so much to the team behind the scenes who've been pulling this together and moderating things, and so thanks so much for that. And do pencil in our next Creative Access Masterclass on how to take the cringe out of networking. So for those of you interested in improving your networking or understanding more about digital networking, come along to that. It will be on Thursday, the 24th of February, 5:30 till 7 o'clock, and you'll be able to book for that soon. Keep an eye out for that on our website. And we hope to see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.